Okay, welcome everyone to the February Kansas Authors Club State Program. I have a few quick announcements. Remember that our published book award deadline is March 1st, so get those books in if they were published in 2025 for the 2026 contest. The Writing from the Zine, Writing from the Center Zine opens for submissions on March 1st, and our theme this year is fear. We are accepting poetry up to 6 poems, fiction up to 3,500 words, creative nonfiction up to 3,500 words, and visual art up to 3 pieces. So be sure and read the guidelines on the website and get your submissions. Start thinking about what you're going to submit to that. And we have our literary contest, which is the unpublished short pieces, poems, and prose, which opens on April 1st. Today, we are joined by Kevin Rabas, past Poet Laureate of Kansas, 2017 to 19. Dr. Rabas teaches at Emporia State University, where he directs the creative writing program and the Donald Reichert Center for Publishing and the Literary Arts. He has 16 books, including Lisa's Flying Electric Piano, which was a Kansas Notable and a Nelson Poetry Book Award. Welcome, Kevin. We are very happy to have you here with us today. Quick reminder to everyone to keep your mics muted, and Kevin will instruct you when he's ready to hear from you otherwise.
Hi, folks. Thanks for having me. So the program today is writing letters and using the letter form in your creative work. And so we're going to talk about one of my passions, which is writing letters and then using letters to fuel my creative writing. And hopefully that will work out for you too, and you'll have some fun and draw upon your own strengths. And so that's kind of where we are. Maybe Tracy can give me a thumbs up. Can you hear me okay? And does everything look okay on the screen? Okay, rock on. So I went ahead and here's the kind of quick version of what we'll be covering today. So we'll explore how to use letters and a little bit on emails, posts, and text, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Not only is their own creative art form, but is also material and fuel for more formal creative work. So one, how to write kind of cool letters, and then two, how to use your letters for your creative writing. I'll
Kevin,
also
I'm going to
yeah.
pause you for just a second. Meeting rooms in Wichita, you can't hear? I think everyone else is hearing okay.
No, we can hear. I'm not sure who posted that. Sorry. This is Wichita
Oh,
Worker.
okay. Very sorry, Kevin. I think we're good to
No
go.
worries. No worries. We'll also explore the epistolary or letter form as a structure in the poem, as well as the narrative, fiction and nonfiction, and other genres too, including film. And so the first bit is writing letters and notes and paper ephemera. Ephemera includes, in this case, recipes, cookie fortunes, photographs, and drawings. And if you've ever gotten a letter from me, I include that kind of bonus material too. Um, you may wonder, why are we doing this and how can this help us? Using material from your letters and your creative writing is something that's kind of time honored. And three folks that I'm studying right now who do this are Jack Kerouac, Emily Dickinson, and John Steinbeck. And I'm going to give you some examples from their work that shows a little bit of that going on. The first one is Emily Dickinson. This is an envelope poem. So Emily Dickinson wrote poems on the back of envelopes as well as other things. I know this is a little bit hard to parse, but just imagine what it says, or you can, get your magnifying glass out. But she would write on the backs of letters. And sometimes she would, send those letters and, it'd become an archival object. Other times she just used it as scrap paper. And so that's something you can do. You can write on the backs of your envelopes. You can use the envelopes as scrap paper. There are many uses. Another inspiration is the Joan Anderson letter. So Neil Cassidy wrote a letter to Jack Kerouac that was long, something like between 12 and 20,000 words, where he told an episode from his life. At the bottom, I put it is rated R and lengthy, so I did not excerpt from it. But Kerouac said that this letter he got from his friend Neil Cassidy formed Kerouac's prose style in On the Road. So Kerouac wrote On the Road, then he got this cool letter, and then he kind of copied that style and rewrote On the Road in the style of the Joan Anderson letter. You may wonder, why is it called the Joan Anderson letter? Mainly because Neil Cassidy talks about Joan Anderson in that letter. As you'll see on the page here, the letter was lost and then refound in 2012. You can look it up and look into it, but I'm not going to excerpt it right now because I'm keeping it PG. Also, John Steinbeck, uh, his letters are almost as good as his novels. At least that's my opinion as I'm browsing through them. And he used the novels, or used the letters as a warm up for the novels, as did Kerouac. Kerouac would take and make a carbon of what he was writing. So he'd use the purplish paper and he'd put one page on top and one beneath as he typed, and then use the carbon copy that he kept as kind of notes for his novels. Same thing with Steinbeck in a way. And here we have, in a second here, an excerpt from a letter when Steinbeck was 24 and broke in house sitting in Lake Tahoe. Steinbeck is from the California area, so this is not so far away. Here is that letter to his friend Webster F. Street, also called Toby, where he talks about fearing the sound of coyotes at his door. And later on, you learn about, that kind of fear of the dark in Steinbeck's work, as well as this fear of being alone and loneliness that he worried that he would suffer the rest of his life. This is the first letter in the collection that I picked up when I went to the Steinbeck Museum a few months ago. And you can see young Steinbeck forming in this letter, and his writing forming, and him grappling with his fears, including the dark, etc. So not only does this letter like turn into fiction later, but it also shows the mind and heart of young Steinbeck. And I'll show you some other stuff like that too. But this is an example of that. I typed this out the other day. I love books of letters by writers and non-writers because you get to see the mind and heart of some folks that you wouldn't otherwise know. So here's the thing with the coyote. I think we've got time, so I might go ahead and read a little bit of it down here. So, dear Toby, do you know one of the things that made me come here was, as you guessed, that I am frightfully afraid of being alone. The fear of the dark is only part of it. I wanted to break that fear in the middle because I am afraid much of my existence is going to be more or less alone, and I might as well get into training for it. It comes on me at night mostly in waves of panic that constrict something in my stomach. But don't you think it is good to fight these things? Last night some quite large animal came and sniffed under the door. I presume it was a coyote, though I do not know. The moon had not come up, and when I ran outside there was nothing to be seen. But the main thing that was I was frightened, even though I knew it would be nothing but a coyote. Don't tell anyone I'm afraid. I do not like to be suspected of being afraid. And the letter goes on from there. So Steinbeck is kind of warming up with this letter for things he'll write, such as Cup of Gold, and using little bits of this. And also we get to see what Steinbeck's up to as a person. Let's keep going. So when it comes more to this talk, we're going to talk about the epistolary, the English epistolary poems, including examples from a book I like called Practice of Poetry, and then some examples from the Poetry Foundation. So we'll get to do some writing given time. And then epistolary in movies like Bridget Jones' Diary. So that's where we're going here when it comes to those things. Let's keep going. Famous letters and not so famous letters and how to learn from them. Like I mentioned earlier, you can learn from the letters of non-writers too. I've got one writer here, but two non-writers. We got Van Gogh's letters, which I've been studying recently. Joan Baez, I read some time ago, and Anais Nin, whose letters are really, really interesting. Here's from Van Gogh, since you might not have seen these. Here's one where he talks about painting, and it lets us kind of see behind the psyche of this person. So here we go. Van Gogh is speaking. Who will be in figure painting what Claude Monet is in landscape. The painter of the future must be a colorist such as never yet been. This painter who is to come, I can't imagine him living in the little cafes, working away with several false teeth as I do, but I think that I am right when I feel that in a later generation it will come, and that as for us, we must work as we can towards that end without doubting and without wavering. So here Van Gogh is talking about how being a colorist is really important, and then also about how the next generation will probably not come out of the struggle that Van Gogh himself did, but we've got to keep going, not doubting and not wavering. So I like this book, and it's kind of a non-writer. I mean, it is a non-writer letter, and you may wonder why letters. Here are my first thoughts and kind of my most pivotal thoughts. So I love the idea of thinking and writing more slowly. You know, we live in a fast-paced society, and as Austin Kleon, who has the book called Steal Like an Artist, says, spend some of your day analog and some of your day digital. In this case, it's analog, writing just without the tech around you. It's tactile, you know, touch. It's cool to write and touch the paper with your fingers and the pen. I love that how it kind of gets at something basic. Next, you can be poetic in quotation marks, meaning you can kind of write things down in a florid way or in a way that brings the important thing to the top with few words, etc. Connect. It's cool to write to somebody and have that connection. I used to write letters about every 1 to 3 days to Dennis Etzel. We did that for about 2.5 years. So I had this pen pal I could write to almost every day. I still write to people. Probably my average right now is 2 or 3 letters a day, and it varies. Next, create a special and archival artifact for your friend or loved one. It's neat to have that thing on hand. Email, harder to get to, etc. Going analog versus digital, we talked about a second ago. It's cool to be able to rest too. I like how you can stop in the middle of a letter, come back to it later. It's not like the email is hanging out there and might disappear, etc. Next, it can be like writing in a diary or meditation or prayer. I love that element of it. Writing letters to me is a meditation often, especially when like I'm not asking for something or giving something in return. And we'll talk about that later. A reason to write. So those are some of my reasons of why to write letters. Next, here are some examples, and some of them are zany. So here's a daily letter written on a scrap of paper. On the back, I had something, and as you can maybe able to see, I scribbled it out with a red line. It comes through the paper, and then it says, Bill, truly enjoyed your letter. Thanks for sending. And there's a little mailbox. And so you can be zany and fun, and if you like to draw, you can draw upon that strength. You know, I'm not a great artist, but I like doing it. So there is one, and these are all from recent, so I didn't save them up. Here's one that's a postcard-like epistolary scribble. So it's kind of like a poem with a drawing, Milo in rain, rust colored. So it's like a kind of like a little haiku-like thing. And then it says where I wrote it and where I was writing from, because I was writing somebody not in Kansas. It has a little Emporia map. You see a little bit of Milo. You know, I'm not a pro at drawing Milo, but there it is, and the car, etc. So you can also write a postcard, and that's a pretty good example of that. Next, a holiday message written on a 3x5 note card. I love 3x5 note cards, especially ones that are blank on both sides. And here is a belated Christmas card. I draw this little tree and things, and everybody gets the same drawing. I get a little better at it each time. And it says, Merry Christmas, dear friend. And then I would write more stuff, and I'll give an example of that later. So I love the 3x5 cards. I keep them with me. I keep envelopes with me. I keep stamps with me. I'm ready to go. Next is a receipt as a memento and timestamp and ephemera. Ephemera meaning stuff that's just kind of almost like literary lint, stuff in your pocket. So here it says, late lunch in the city. We went to Chipotle, and I would send this along with the letter. Sometimes I even write a poem about Chipotle. And here is the artifact from that. Or here's where I was at a certain time. It's almost like an alibi, but it's fun. So I like to send receipts, but not to everybody. Um, Cookie fortune and greeting. I like to take the cookie fortunes and send them too. Sometimes I tape them to a note card and write something along with it. Sometimes you just get the fortune. So a friend's advice is invaluable from Panda Express. Rock on. So there is something else you might get. Here's the 3x5 cards again with a little pro tip. I put a little 1 in the upper right hand corner, and then I put a 2 on the next one, and that way you know what order they go in if they get shuffled. And so I sometimes write on the backs or sometimes just on the fronts. Hard to say. So here it says, Dear Alicia, thanks for bringing Dad cake yesterday, and thanks. There's a little picture of a cake with a candle for all you do for Mom and Dad out west. And there's some mountains and a little sun. So you can draw upon your own ability to doodle. I'm sure everybody can doodle at least a little bit. Look at mine. You can do better than that. Next, we're getting back to what the epistolary means when it comes to literature. So this is from Wikipedia, as it says there. Epistolary means relating to an epistle or letter. It may refer to Christian liturgical book containing several readings for church services and the New Testament epistles. We're going to skip that for now. It could be an epistolary novel, a novel written as a series of letters. We're going to look at that a lot. And then epistolary poem, a poem in the form of epistle or letter. We're going to look at that a lot too. So if somebody says, I loved your epistolary works, you can say, yep, here's how. So the epistolary and prose, especially novels, why would we do this? The letters add realism. It appears as if the author is not interfering. Of course, it's a trick. You're writing this, right? The first epistolary novel was called Prison of Love. It was written in Spanish by Diego de San Pedro, published in 1485. So that's how long the epistolary novel's been around, at least that we know. So there it is, the epistolary novel. Also, you may wonder about epistolary novels in English. Samuel Richardson's early English novels, such as Clarissa and Pamela, are also epistolary. Clarissa is super long. I did read it. I like Pamela better because it's shorter. But I studied the early English novel, and many of them were epistolary novels. Letters, fictional characters writing letters back and forth. We'll get into that more in a second. Bram Stoker's Dracula, also epistolary. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, also epistolary. More recent, Alice Walker's The Color Purple, also epistolary. You may wonder, what are the kinds of epistolary novels or stories? You can make a shorter version. You don't have to commit to the epistolary novel now. So the monologic kinds, whereas we only get one person's point of view. An example would be Letters of a Portuguese Nun. So that's a super famous early one where you just get one person's side of the letters. Another example in poetry would be Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. Another one is dialogic, where two people write back and forth. The Letters of Fanny Butler would be an example of that from antiquity. And then polylogic, three or more people writing back and forth. Dracula would be a good example of that. So you got these three kinds of epistolary novels or stories. I've got some epistolary stories that I've written with friends or solo. It's kind of fun. You might try it out. Then now we're going to get into the poetry stuff, but also you can do this, as I note at the bottom, you can note that you can do this for prose too. But the examples I found were shorter when it came to poetry prompts. These are from the Poetry Foundation, the links at the bottom. I took just a couple. They've got about 8 examples. So here's something we'll try out since we have time. So try writing a letter from someone else's perspective, perhaps a famous person or a literary or mythological character. Have your character write to someone they're angry or upset with and explain why. So you write this passionate letter as a poem, or if you like prose, just write it in prose, even though it came from the Poetry Foundation. Totally okay. The next one, try writing a poem that enacts a similar experience for the reader. Write about a past event to a friend and frame it as a private letter in which you explain your side of what happened. Keep in mind that others will end up reading your letter. How does knowledge of a larger audience affect your letter poem? So here you write about an event. The other one, you're writing passionately about, for something. Note it says, although these exercises were initially designed for letter poems, you could just as easily make letter prose using these same prompts. So there's something we may write if we have time today. I've got a more general call for a letter poem. on the next page. It's pretty long, but it goes through kind of all the parts of the piece. So we'll look at that for a second. This one's by Robin Bain. I teach this one in class quite often. So here it is. This is kind of like the background. Why would you write a letter poem? This gets into it. What are the intricacies? Write a poem in which a particular speaker who refers to him or herself as I is addressing a particular you. The poem does not need to be an actual letter. It doesn't have to start out with dear whoever. But since the speaker will be addressing the you, the receiver of the poem, readers will feel as if they are overhearing the words. Give some thought to whom you want to talk in the poem. It might be a stranger or a fictional character. It might be someone instead. It might be someone you know very well, although in the poem, you're of course free to say anything, not just what you would ordinarily say in person. The letter might turn out to be unmailable. Before you start writing, brainstorm for 5 minutes, making a list of all the kinds of persons you could write or talk to. Include some you know well, some you don't know well. You might also make a list of who the I could be. If there is an entry in your list of possible yous and I's that surprise you, an entry that you didn't expect to write down but that intrigues you, that might be the good one to pick. And here's the disclaimer part. The poem will get off to a good start if there's some need for the speaker to be talking or writing to the you. Ground yourself in a particular occasion, aware of setting, circumstance, etc. So there is the general call for letter poems, and it's in this book called Practice of Poetry in the upper right-hand corner. I love that book of exercises. This is one of my favorite assignments. Next, I've got an example of me doing the exercise. So you'll see, what does this sort of thing look like? This is one that could have been picked up by Hallmark, but has not yet, knock on wood. So here we go. Dear Dad, you have taught me to lift things, to shoot things. You've taught me every game I know. And I owe you, I give you every swished basket, every smoked blue rock, every moved sofa. I do them in your honor, with your blood in my muscles, your grip in my fingers, along my thumb and in the center of my palm, muscle made for moving, muscle made for gripping and for holding, muscle made for balancing a ball so that every part of the hand takes hold, how we take hold when we shake. So there's me doing the exercise. It's a Father's Day poem. I love letter poems. I write a lot of them. So there is one example. Let's look at a super famous modern example. So this is Maxine Kumin writing to Anne Sexton. And Anne Sexton, unfortunately, turned on her car in the garage and let the exhaust bring her end. So this is a very sad poem, but full of wonderful details and a sense of heart. So here it goes. How it is. Shall I tell you how it is in your clothes? A month after your death, I wear your blue jacket. The dog at the center of my life recognizes you've come to visit. He's ecstatic. In the left pocket, a hole. In the right, a parking ticket, delivered up last August on Bay State Road. In my heart, a scatter like milkweed, a flinging from the pods of the soul. My skin presses your old route line. It is dry and hot outside. I think of the last day of your life, old friend, how I would unwind it, paste it together in a different collage, back from the death car idling in the garage, back up the stairs, your praying hands unlaced, resembling the bits of bread and tuna fish in a ceremony of sandwich, running the whole movie backward to a space we could easily be in, a kitchen space with vodka and ice, our words like living meat. Dear friend, you have excited crowds with your example. They swell like wine bags straining at your seams. I will be years gathering up our words, fishing out letters and snapshots and stains, leaning my ribs against this durable cloth to put on the dumb blue blazer of your death. So that one's super sad, but a wonderful letter, especially about this raincoat that Maxine Kumin, speaker of the poem, puts on, and Anne Sexton thinks her person is back. The dog does. So there are a couple examples of epistolary poems, one super famous by Maxine Kumin and one by me. So there we got movies. Let's go back and write for a little bit. How much time do we have? We have enough time. So let's write for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe we'll aim it for 7. And you can use one of the exercises that's up on the screen here. Or if you want to backtrack, you've got the general one there if you can remember it. But here's a couple on the screen. You do not have to write poetry, Like I say at the bottom, you can write prose for this. They're just designed for poets, but they work just as well for poetry. Let's put in about 7 minutes of writing. Use one of these exercises on the screen and start out a letter piece. So this can be a letter poem or a letter prose, and you will get to be an epistolary writer, epistolary fiction, epistolary poetry, whatever. So here we go. We're going to clock in for 7 minutes, and hopefully we'll get to share some of these with a little bit of luck. So off you go. Don't feel like you got to finish. Just get a start. We're going to start for 7 minutes. A little more than 1 minute left, so give yourself about 1 minute to come to a stopping place. Now about 20 seconds. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and stop. If you're on a roll and you just can't bring yourself to stop, you can write for another 1 or 2 minutes while I talk a little bit. So if you're really on a roll, I don't want to stop you. So you may wonder what else can you do with the epistolary form? And a number of movies you might have seen also include strains of the epistolary form, including Bram Stoker's Dracula, 84 Charing Cross Road, I might have said that wrong, Bridget Jones' Diary, The Martian, We Need to Talk About Kevin, not about me, Charlie, Dangerous Liaisons, very famous one, World War Z, the zombie one. And here it talks about how those came about as well as how they're used in the films themselves, meaning was the book they came from written in letters or text or whatever, and then how do they use the epistolary form in the movie itself. So Bram Stoker's Dracula uses letters, diary entries, telegrams, and newspaper articles to convey the story, staying true to the epistolary style of the original novel. And I didn't talk much about this, but the epistolary form in the early English versions, etc., often includes things like telegrams, diary entries, newspaper titles, or articles. So that's kind of baked into the epistolary too. Then let's skip down a little bit here. The Martian uses the astronaut's video log as the epistolary device. So stardate, whatever, and then they talk a little bit. If you're into Star Trek, etc. So you can, it could start out as an epistolary form, or you could use the epistolary form in a movie if you're writing a screenplay or filming something. And then I've got a couple of pictures here. There's Bridget Jones' Diary poster, and there's the 84. I'm not sure how to say it. Sharing Crossroad with Anne Bancroft and Anthony Hopkins. So those are some other ways you could move the epistolary into your art if you're a screenwriter or a filmmaker, for instance. So let's just stop there for now and see if somebody would like to share something they've written, epistolary in the moment today, hot off the press. And we'll just open it up. Tracy will help me to unmute you. Maybe just raise your hand if you got something to share, and we will share it before the group. And we'll also move into Q&A as part of this too. So if you have questions, I'm happy to try to field them.
We have several in Wichita whenever you put us in the queue.
Yeah, just go ahead and I'll let you be democratic over there. You guys are very, very small in my screen, so you may have to self-select and say who wants to start speaking your epistolary creative writing.
Just come over the Yeah. Okay, you are on screen.
Okay, I just recently watched the movie Scream 2.
Cool.
And for those who may not have seen it, the killer is the mother of one of the killers from the first one, and her motivation is because the main character killed her son in the first one. So I wrote a letter that if she had written it instead of, she could have gone through her anger without actually going on a killing spree. So
Good idea.
I
You kind of
had to
solved it.
rewrite the ending of a movie I just watched. Dearest Sydney, it's not enough that your slutbag mother stole my husband from me, but now you have stolen my son from me as well. Sure, Billy was a murderer and was actively trying to kill you at the time, but you didn't have to make sure he was dead. You could have let him be arrested so I would still have my little boy. He could have been helped. I just know it. Yes, I abandoned him, and he probably wouldn't have gone crazy had I not done so. It wasn't his fault that my low-life ex fell for your mother's charms. Heck, I could have taken him with me when I left. We could have built a good life together somewhere else. The more I think about it, the more I realize that it's really my fault that Billy's gone. You may have delivered the kill shot, but my abandonment of him caused the unhinged maniac he became, and that maniac deserved to be killed. So I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry I left him and caused him to go crazy, and I'm sorry I ever blamed you for his death. Yours truly, Nancy Loomis.
Wow, I'm gonna give you some poetry snaps. Rock on. So I love the confession and apology elements of that one. There's like a reason to write because, fixing this, etc. So really nice. It looks like we got another one coming from Wichita. And if you would maybe say your name too, so we get to know each other.
That was Amy Boyd.
It looks like Dwayne Herman is calling in.
Okay. Okay. 10 years or so ago, I had a short story published that was composed of letters of one side of a conversation that carried the story, and it's in my collection, Exaltation. But today I wrote, and this is to a guy that I'm actually writing to. Dear James, it seems to me that I've been writing to you forever, but the letters have not been just to you, nor are you the first person incarcerated that I've written to. The letters are a natural outpouring of my need to write. Even before I wrote to anyone so confined, I would write over 100 letters a year. I kept copies of most of them, I think. At least I kept copies of some of them. That was an early expression of my need to overcome my mother's attempt to erase my personality, my need to be independent from her oppressive micro-control. Later, letters to you, though, are special. After I share the current events in my life, I add other literature to give you more content to read to distract you from prison life. I can't really imagine being in prison, but I'm sure I'd hate it. I wish I could write more than the once or twice a month that I've been managed to.
Nice, nice. I love that phrase, natural outpouring. It seemed like this letter had that kind of heart, and there's a kind of psychological intimacy, and the line about distracting from the daily life of being incarcerated, that was also particularly beautiful to me. Rock on.
I may actually send this to him.
That sounds good. Turn your homework into something real. That's what I always wish people would do, is use what you've written. Well, sometimes you don't, but you know what I'm saying. Who else? I see a hand at Wichita. I don't know if that's clapping or if I think it's coming up to the speaker. Okay.
We have more. We could probably do this all day, and if we need to, we can do it in our own session afterwards too. But
cool.
Yeah.
That makes me feel so good that it's getting you guys going. That's what it's for.
My name is Cynthia Shigo, and when I heard what you were talking about, I said to my daughter, who's also here today, I should write a book based on the letters I sent my mother from boarding school. So this is, I'm calling it A Letter Never Sent. Marcia told me not to write of homesickness or loneliness, nothing too sad. So I am not writing about little kids sobbing on the flight from Lagos, or cold Spam sandwiches for lunch, or cold bare concrete beneath my bare feet first thing in the morning. I will not speak of how I long for a daddy-sized hug, or mama waking me with a concert of hymns from the grand piano. No, I will put away these lines, this grief, to write a happy little letter, lest my sorrow bring you to rescue me, carry me back to the safety of home and homeland, lost. From all the Africans you would have ever told about Jesus would be lost then, would go to hell, and it would be my fault.
Oh yeah. Yeah, just since I'm the speaker, I'll give you some notes like I've been giving the others. You have such a a skill and gift for details that reveal character, meaning that let us know the personality and wants and needs of somebody. And those details include cold spam sandwiches, daddy-sized hug, and then the word rescue, which seemed to be kind of a through word for that particular piece. Really wonderful. Once again, so many good things coming out of this. I'd be like, my work is done here, I'm going to think here pretty soon. So, we still got about 10 or 15 minutes, but let's do maybe one more and then open the Q&A. And then if we get tired of Q&A, we can do more sharing. So who would like to be the last, well, probably last person to share something that they wrote based on one of these exercises? And you can look at the Poetry Foundation to find all 8 or whatever, but I picked ones that would fit on the screen that I liked. Who else? Brave souls. Tracy's gonna go. Rock on, our MC.
I love this kind of stuff, and I didn't even think my current work in progress. I'm thinking about writing it in letters, so very timely.
Cool.
Mine's short. Dear Dad, your ashes arrived in the mail on Tuesday. Though I was expecting you, tears came as I left the post office, crossed the street to the parking lot, deposited you in the trunk of my car. Later that evening, I sent a message to the family group chat, letting everyone know that you had been returned. But I'm not going to take you home right away. I'm going to take you on a few more road trips, maybe sprinkle some of you in interesting places. Give us one last long goodbye.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love how you use the occasion or event of the poem and you foregrounded that. Your ashes arrived on Tuesday. That was like not a better start I can think of to that particular letter. This one also gave me a signal that I might cry. I'm not going to cry on camera, but there's that too. And then sprinkle you in interesting places. That is also brilliant. Good stuff. You're pros at this. Keep doing it, and you will be even stronger at it. Let's see, Q&A. Who has some questions about the epistolary form or using your letters or writing letters that you feel good about? There's a hand in Wichita I can see. That could be the title of something. There's a hand in Wichita.
Yeah, it's Kathy's hand.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I can move till you see me. I'm Kathy Feemster. A few months ago, I came across a letter that my mother wrote to herself when she was 15. And it blew me away. It gave me a view of her as a teenager that I had never experienced as a child or adult or anything. So that started me off on thinking this could be the jumping off point of a novel. And my first thought is to use that letter as the first part to explain the beginning. But then I thought that one of the people mentioned in the letter was her best friend, a girl named Patsy. And I thought that maybe she could continue writing letters to Patsy, and they could be the start of each chapter. And has that everything's been done before, but is that a way that would be amenable to readers and publishers? What do you think of that?
And I don't have a crystal ball when it comes to publishers. But I do think I like that idea, and it has been done. So you could Google around a little bit and find some books that also do the same move. I love the bit about your mother writing about herself at age 15, and just if you wanted to see kind of writerly community or a brother or sister piece, there's a Tim Bascom book who's in Topeka who was leading the Kansas Book Fest there for years. I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but the subtitle is something like uh, Fathers and Sons, and it's like his third or fourth book. Anyway, the first piece in there, which is only about 3 or 4 pages long, does some of what you're doing. So you'd find community there with that. You can Google it, Tim Bascom, and then the Fathers and Sons book. It's the first piece in there. But I like to take your idea further and envision it. I like the idea of starting out with real letters or imaginary letters with each section. I think that's super cool, and I think I would run with that and find some other novels that do that. Another novel that does something like that, but it's not exactly the same, that I liked, and that is by a living person, is there's a Tom Averill collection. It's a novel that is about an early like person that works with rocks, like finding out history from rocks. I can't remember the title of that either, but I think it's his latest or second to latest book. And that one uses some of that technique too, and you'd probably find inspiration. So those are some places you could go to find community among writers that are, that are living, and do something like that. I guess the other question is, do you have any worries about rights? And would your mom mind? Probably not. But
He's long gone.
exactly. So, but there's
I
that.
thought of that. The main point of the letter is that she had an argument with a boy named Paul. And I never heard of this Paul.
Yeah.
But I do want to change the names.
Yeah, you're a step ahead of me. I would just change the names, and there shouldn't be a problem. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a lawyer. Let's get another question. Rock on. I love this idea. I'd say go with it. Enjoy the process, and it might even be, well, who knows? There are so many. When we're digging through our past, other people's past, we always discover things, and that can be interesting and fun. At least one more question. We have enough time for one more question. It looks like somebody's approaching the nope. So let's see. Other questions. It looks like Dwayne has a question. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Not exactly a question, but what I found out when I was writing that short story, it was easy for me to start the letters. The letters, it's one side of a conversation that are found in the attic and read by a later 100 years later, but the letter writer and the woman who found it both lost children, and so it helps her handle her grief. But when I got into it, and then I realized I need some way to stop this. I don't want the girl in the story or the reader just to be left hanging when there's no more letters. I wanted to bring those letters to a natural close, and I finally figured out that it would be simplest to have the letter writer move, or one of them move, and that move was in the last letter, so it brought a closure to the sequence without letting the reader just be hanging dry there, and I'd never anticipated that as a problem when I started.
Yeah, and that brought up a few things for me when it comes to models too, since we're playing with models right now. I really love this book series. At least I loved it as a high school. I came back to it a few times, called Griffin and Sabina. Last word seems like Sabine is how it looks. It's visual art, letters, and postcards. They're all made up, invented. The characters are invented. It's an epistolary form, and it was wildly popular, so you could probably find a copy. That's my most playful, youthful one that I like that's epistolary. Then also, of course, when you're digging up the things, Bridges of Madison County, the book, and then the movie. And then one of my favorites that's just in a movie is Amelie. There's a series of letters that are reconstructed and kind of fictionalized in the movie Amelie, the French film with Tattoo is the main actor's last name. We are coming to the end here. Maybe one last testimony or question. Audrey Tattoo, something like that. Amelie, it's charming. Okay, well, we may move.
Do we have time for one more comment in Wichita?
Yes. Somebody's approaching the screen.
I'm Nancy Ogle. I just have a really quick comment. You talked about, this could be done through telegrams and so on, and just using modern conveniences. I've written a short story using text, and I've read several books that are just email exchanges instead of letters.
Yes. And there are a lot of, especially young adult books that are texts or emails or any number of, TikTok, etc. I'm kind of a digital immigrant here, so I'm still learning. But yeah, there's lots of that going on out there. And so I just focus on letters because it's the thing I know. But there are modern versions, as I mentioned in the title, texts, emails, whatever. Use those, have the little bubbles and the little three dots as they're thinking, etc. Use the conventions and create suspense and interest. Okay, so we're coming to the very end here. I'll hang out for a little bit. I really appreciate spending time with you and sharing some of my passion for letters and epistolary creative forms. Rock on and keep writing. And maybe in 3 years, I'll see some books that were inspired by this and I'll feel like my work here is done. Have a good one and right on, right on.
Thank you, Kevin.
My pleasure.
This is wonderful. I sometimes, it's like, oh, why didn't we plan a 2-hour program instead of a 1-hour program? And the writing was fun. I have one quick announcement, and then I will open the rooms for the groups who want them. Next program is March 21st at 1:30 p.m. And our topic is about writing programs for children, presented by Lindsay Garcia, who is the vice chair of the House of Morrow. And she's been doing some really amazing programming for 5th graders here in Emporia. And she's going to share a little about that story. And if your group is interested in working with children, I think this is a program that could be easily copied and taken into some of our other Kansas communities. So be sure and check that one out. And yes, these are always recordings are posted for 1 month on the website and available for everybody to watch. All right, I'm going to turn off the recording.